Arnab Goswami on the debate at 10. Presented by My 11 Circle. Powered by Green Lamb, Apollo 24/7 and Poco Mobiles.
And ladies and gentlemen, the 45-minute interview with Zelenskyy on Republic has become a global talking point from his repeated offers for direct talks, one-on-one, where he says, I would like to meet Putin one-on-one now, to a direct appeal to India to provide a security guarantee to Ukraine, to his message on what he calls are the half measures of the West on sanctions. Zelenskyy is pushing the envelope in this no-holds-barred interview. Here are some of the global headlines from that interview, and then our global debate. Mr. President, will you talk to Russia after Bucha? The Russian foreign minister says you're not serious about the negotiations. He said the Bucha massacre, what you're saying, is aimed to spoil or torpedo the ongoing negotiations. Will you continue to talk?
We are ready to conduct negotiations with the leader of the Russian Federation, despite how difficult it might be after Bucha, after many different events. I know that there are many people in Ukraine who would be against conversations with President Putin. I know this because we can see what they are doing, what they have done in the territory of Ukraine. But as the president, I want to put an end to this war and to search for any possible steps towards that.
Is there any way in which India can mediate to help bring the war to an end? You've already spoken about India probably being a security guarantor.
I'm grateful for the humanitarian assistance and diplomatic assistance from the Prime Minister. And still, I would really like for him to think of becoming one of the security guarantors for Ukraine. But in this case, there would be no balance. Then you would need to have not only the wisdom, but an open position, because that would be security guarantees for Ukraine. And so if Russia would violate that agreement, now those security guarantors would be against Russian Federation and against its aggression. That's why I would like to have special relationship between our people, between our authority.
President Zelenskyy, if the Russians tell you to accept the status quo as of now, will you accept it? Or will you want a status quo ante? Will you want the situation to go back to what it was before the invasion?
Today, we are ready to say that at least they should withdraw to those positions that they had in the beginning of the 24th of February. And those cities that are currently occupied by Russians, we will not leave them occupied.
Yesterday, you told the UN Security Council that you either act immediately or dissolve yourself altogether. What specifically can the UN do for Ukraine?
UN can do a lot. Because simply using the words, we are concerned, is not enough to stop the war. We feel only the words and the support in the words. They have to be courageous. They have to be powerful. If we're talking about the isolation of the Russian Federation or different international organizations, there should be an isolation.
If you are getting all these weapons and these heavy weapons, are you, President Zelenskyy, preparing for a longer war with Russia with all these Western weapons?
If the world would like to end this war, then you would need to swiftly provide us with these weapons. And when we will have these weapons on our territory, then we would be powerful enough. We're not willing to capture any single city or territory or any person in the Russian Federation. We're not willing to have that. We are fighting for our land.
Are sanctions working? Is it better to have no sanctions rather than half-baked sanctions?
I would like the sanctions to be as weapons, like something like a nuclear weapon. And I'm grateful to those countries who have imposed significant sanctions. Now, if you have already taken that weapon in your hands, those sanctions, these state-of-the-art weapons, then fire them, press it, impose all the sanctions, powerful sanctions. Do not pretend as if you are trying to support Ukraine and then, trying to get to not lose all the economic relations with Russia.
That was probably his most comprehensive interview since the invasion and certainly since Bucha, and he's made his position absolutely clear. Most importantly, 4 times in the interview he says, I want to talk to Putin. When I asked him about Lavrov, he said, I don't want to talk about Lavrov, but I want to talk to Putin. I want to meet Putin. Not once, not twice. He says 3 times. Bohdan Nahali, I want to start with you. He says 3 times that I want to talk to Putin. Putin should meet me. I'm ready to meet the president of Russia. I'm ready at any moment. The faster we meet, the better it is. There will be no casualties. Why is he so keen? I'm opening the debate between Bohdan Nahalio and Nikita Menkovich. I don't know why Nikita is laughing or smiling at that. I also want to introduce Joachim Bitalik, Peter Kuznik, Margarota Bonikowska, who's joining us from Moscow. We have Zachary Paikin from Brussels. From the Center for European Policy Studies, Martin L., who's a senior fellow at the Vicegrad Insight, and he's joining us from the Czech Republic, Dr. Marcos Papadopoulos from London, and Alfred Dizias, who's a former United Nations independent expert on the promotion of a democratic and equitable international order from Geneva. Now, when he says, I want to meet Putin, I think he's put the ball in Putin's court. That's what I think he's done.
Arnab.
What do you think, Bohdan?
Arnab, first and foremost, thank you for inviting the President of Ukraine to address your viewers, because they could hear from at first hand. Secondly, don't get carried away. It's not the first time he's called for a direct meeting with Putin. He's been calling for this ever since he ran for president in 2019, because he wanted to return Donbass and Crimea to Ukraine. I mean, the war with Russia didn't start now on the 24th of February. Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014 after Ukraine tried to join the EU as an associate member of a trade organization. Though the Russian propagandists here will say it was a coup d'etat. Look, that's not important. The important thing is that he wants peace, but not peace at any price. And he wants India to play a role. Unfortunately, I stress, India sat on the fence yet again today in the vote in the General Assembly and in the vote to suspend Russia's membership of the Human Rights Council. Unfortunately, India sat on the fence and was not one of the 93 countries that voted for it. So I think he's reaching out to India, but it's a rhetorical reaching out, because he knows that India is not going to pull its weight.
Okay, you still didn't answer the question. The fact is that he has not said, he's completely unconditional, no preconditions, not once, not twice. I was not putting words in his mouth. He has said, and he has most significantly, I think it's very significant because he said it after Bucha. I did mention to him, this is his first interview after Bucha. So I want to get Nikita's perspective on this, please. And he has also said, no one but Putin. I followed up by asking him that you met Putin 9 hours, but there were other countries, who were in the room, like Germany at that point of time. I think the meeting had happened in France. This time he said, no, we don't need intermediaries. It needs to be one-on-one. And he repeated it many times. I think it says something. What does it say, Nikita?
I think that we have a very big discussion about this puppet show, because Mr. Zelensky only pretends to be a Ukrainian president. In fact, he's an actor, still just an actor who is playing this part and reading words written by a screenwriter from the United States. In fact, the problem is not that Mr. Zelensky wants or doesn't want to talk with Putin. The problem is that after Ukrainian national war committed massacre in Bucha and pretended to blame Russia in this act, it's really hard to have any kind of talks with Mr. Zelensky, who supports and presents this crime regime. We cannot ignore all these crimes committed by Ukrainian army. I sent to your editors video released by another troop of Ukrainian war who came in Borodenki.
No, but answer my question. Will Putin agree to direct talks? Why won't Putin? I think what he's done is quite important. He has, and I want to get Peter Kuznick on this, he has put the ball in Putin's court, and he has said that it is not my level to respond to Lavrov or the foreign minister, but I'm ready to respond to any of the words of the president of Russia. So it's Putin. Putin must give the world a reason now why he won't come on the table. I want to go across to. I think the ball is firmly in Putin's court, and Nikita, you're not being able to handle it, because here is the president of Ukraine saying, I'm happy to sit across with Putin. How can Putin avoid it? He has to give a reason. He has no reason. And Zelensky has very candidly said, I'm ready to talk about the territory of Ukraine, Crimea, and Donbass. I'm ready to discuss any topic, he says, Peter, any topic. But I want to do that, he told me. He said, I want to do that with the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin. Now, what's the strategy there, Peter? It's not an unthought statement. Obviously, there's a strategy behind this somewhere.
Zelensky, will you give me a chance to answer? Okay, no, you will not give me a chance.
Who goes first? Okay, Peter's going in. Yeah, Peter.
Zelensky understands that the only way to end this war is by talking directly with Putin. And he also understands that the longer this draws out, the more casualties there's going to be, the more horrific scenes and images. And I don't agree with Zelensky on everything, but he's certainly absolutely correct about this, that there's not going to be an end to this war until he and Putin sit down and start to talk. Yes. And they don't have to agree on everything beforehand.
Yes.
You asked them about that. And they don't have to agree on beforehand. What they've got to do is have certain understandings. And that's going to then include Ukraine not being in NATO, Ukraine becoming neutral country, and they're going to negotiate over the Donbass. And Russians say they're not even going to discuss Crimea.
Yes.
Well, Crimea is a done deal already. They've got Crimea. They had Crimea before. They've taken it back. But they can sit down and talk, and there should be a ceasefire. Because as soon as there's a ceasefire, then the killing stops. Yep. And then the bombing stops.
Yes.
And then they can work out the disagreements.
In fact, Peter, I was quite, I'll tell you, to be very honest, I was quite taken aback when I asked him that question with his reply. And I want to go to Alfred, and I thought that he would say to me, when we were prepping for the interview, Alfred, when I thought I'd ask him that question, Alfred, my first instinct would have been, because I've seen him get emotional at times, my first instinct was he would have said to me, I was open to talks, but after Bucha, I will not talk. But what he said actually surprised me. He said, Alfred, that there is opposition to talking now within Ukraine, but I want to talk. I thought that was quite statesmanlike. He admitted to me very candidly that there is anger in Ukraine, especially that anger is more post-Bucha. But he still said that that is the only way to end the war. I thought that was a very well thought out statement from him. And I don't think that's an American prompted statement. He seemed to be speaking very much on his own. What did you think of that? Alfred, what did you think of that?
Well, I have always, since day one, said that it is necessary to have direct talks between the leaders. Now, Putin in December proposed two treaties which I read and which are moderate. And if they had been accepted, and if there had been a security architecture for all of Europe, Ukraine, Russia, there were a global security architecture, we would not have the tragedy that we have today. A ceasefire, I thoroughly agree, it's urgent. Stop the killing and sit down and negotiate. There have been negotiations hosted by Erdogan of Turkey and evidently Hungary. Viktor Orban has offered his good offices, and so has Switzerland and India. And I think it's very important to advance on these possibilities of dialogue. Yes. But it must be a quid pro quo. It must be a give and take.
Yes.
And I think that those like the president of Poland, who say you don't talk to criminals, etc., I think that war is a serious thing. We're not going to end this war with winner takes all. We're not going to end this war by arming Ukraine to the teeth. As a matter of fact, it's the worst possible solution to continue this war. And I, as an American, I feel almost co-responsible for the breach of trust and the breach of agreements with the expansion of NATO to the very borders of Russia against those assurances given in 1989, in 1990, and 1991. So we have considerable responsibility, and you know the books of Professor John Mersheimer, whom I know well, and he just had an article in The Economist in which he analyzed the implications of this.
Alfred, Joachim Bitterlich, who has been former national security advisor to the former German Chancellor Helmut Kohl and has also been Germany's ambassador to NATO, seems to very strongly disagree with you. I'd like to go across to you. Yes, Joachim.
Well, Hans-Dietrich Genscher has it. You can read it. You can listen to it in the internet. I mean, there's no doubt about it that these assurances were given, and the documents are available, and they've been consulted by God knows how many professors by now. So that's not the point. I mean, the point is that every country has a right to national security. Yeah. That national security was under threat by NATO. And what else is if you flood the country with weapons and you train the army, the French, the Germans, the British were training the Ukrainians, and against whom? Of course, against Russia. And Russia had every reason to feel threatened. And by the way, Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the U.S. Charter prohibits not only the use of force, but it also prohibits the threat of the use of force. It prohibits the provocation.
But then we also, Alfred, Joachim would like to respond. Yes, Joachim, please do. Then I will make my point after that.
If an American allows that a German is responding, okay. There were no promises. 1991, we were discussing about Germany, about German reunification, not about expansion of NATO towards the East. The real case has been, for me, 2007, 2008, and who was responsible for this invitation of Ukraine to join NATO. Not the Europeans at all, but only the US. It was Obama. I regret. This was the situation.
Well, the US bears considerable responsibility for that.
The Ukraine has been, let's say, the red line for the Russians from the beginning. We knew this. And our idea, since, let's say, all the time I was in government, was, let's say, a non-aligned Ukraine as a bridge between West and East. We associated towards European Union and towards the Eastern economic sphere. This was our idea during the whole time. But I come back to what Arnab has been developing. He is right. Zelensky is extremely courageous here, but he has been asking for direct talks from the beginning to Putin. And it's true, within the Ukrainian political sphere, there are others actually more reluctant to discuss with the Russians.
Yeah.
For example, I listened yesterday evening to the mayor of Kiev, former box world champion, and he was even more reluctant towards certain goals of Zelensky. By the way, he was asking to negotiate in Berlin. It's his second home city. But therefore, I think I welcome this idea of Zelensky towards India. But this would mean, let's call it an end of the classical Indian non-alignment.
Yes.
India should take over a real role in world politics and in peace politics.
Yes.
And this would be an important step for India. Please, you are in our Western European world. You are a bit, let's say, let's call it under fire. Because just I read before joining your show that India has been buying oil in Russia since 24th of February.
So has Germany.
Year, even more than in the whole of last year.
So has Germany.
We are, yes, more last year gas, not oil, gas, but we have to reduce it. We know it. Because we have, let's say, we are now in a real confrontation with Russia. This is the news.
We have. So you see, Wokem, I completely agree with you. India has to play a role. Before I make this discussion about India, I think so, and I think it's very significant. I'm just coming to you, Bodan. Just coming. I think the President Zelensky very clearly said we want India to be a security guarantor. I don't know if he meant it rhetorically, as Bodan says. I don't think he meant it rhetorically. Personally, I don't think so. I think we are coming to
I agree with you.
You don't think so? My point is,
agree with you.
When he said I've spoken to Prime Minister Modi and I want India to be a security guarantor, I think it was not rhetorical. But anyway, yes, Bodan and Nikita wants to come back into the debate. Who goes first? Bodan goes first or Nikita? Bodan. Okay,
I'd like
Bodan.
to say
Bodan goes first. Bodan goes first. Sorry to the others who've not come in yet. Yes, please.
Excuse me. Yes. Okay, yes, I will, very briefly. Look, you're missing the entire point. This is not about Russia and Ukraine and two presidents. This is about a maniacal president who has denied the existence of the Ukrainians as a separate entity,
but your president wants to meet him.
And sovereign state.
But your president wants to meet him.
What do we have to talk about? A maniacal killer?
No, but that's what. Are you questioning your own president?
This is about Mariupol. This is about
Bodan, I didn't say. Bodan, how do you end it? I think
he's a diplomat. He's a diplomat. He wants the Indians to understand him.
No, sorry,
but
he's not addressing the Indians.
No,
he's not addressing the Indians. He's addressing Putin.
Right.
I'm sorry, he's addressing Putin.
Let me speak. Why are you interrupting me?
No, I'm not interrupting you. I'm correcting you.
Are you asking me a question or are you lecturing me?
I'm asking you a counter question.
Let me answer my question, please.
Counter question.
Okay, so let me answer the question. You are missing the point. That the point is that we have a maniacal Caligula in Moscow who is denying the right of the Ukrainians as a nation to exist.
Okay, who goes on with that?
And I disagree with Alfred, my friend. This is not about the insecurity of Russia. It's about the insecurity of Ukraine.
I think we have a moment
That's why
here.
Ukraine wanted, like Poland and Czechoslovakia,
to
join Eastern Europe in NATO.
All I'm saying is, and I want to get in Martin L. I want to get in Martin L. from
Why do
Czechoslovakia.
we care about Russia so much?
I'm not taking any Russian point of view on this. I'm going to Martin L.
Let them live in Eurasia, deal with Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. They've got plenty of space.
I'm going to Martin L. I don't know why.
To answer or not?
Oh, okay. Can I? Okay, Nikita responds. Martin, 3 panelists haven't spoken yet. That's all, And can I go to Martin L on this? I just feel we have a moment, Martin. We have a moment. We have seen this war for 43 days, and I think that the reason why the Ukrainian president came on an Indian network and made this point is because he knows the point will be reached out, and he's making a point. I think it's difficult for him to say, I want to meet Putin. Do you think it makes him popular among the Ukrainians to say 3 times on an Indian channel being watched across the world that I want to meet Putin? It's not making him popular even with you. Even you disagree with him clearly.
Arnab, he has been saying that for 2 years.
As he said it since Bucha. Did you expect him to say it after Bucha as well?
No, he said this since 2019.
I'm talking of this context.
Bucha
I'm not.
Is Ukrainian war cry. Stop this fairy tale.
You were not at war in 2019,
Bucha is a problem. Why the negotiation doesn't work?
I say, okay.
It is a problem.
Okay. We got.
Bucha means Russian butchers. Russian butchers. Russian butchers.
Came to Bucha
Russian
and started
butchers.
killing people.
Russian
the same
butchers.
Situation in Polovikina.
Russian butchers.
Death camp in
Russian
Polovikina. Death camp in
Russian
Mariupol.
butchers.
We cannot have negotiation with people who commit war crimes.
Putinista, Russian butcher. You have blood on your hands, mate. You have blood on your hands. And the tribunals will catch up with you.
I'm talking about your country war crimes. Please,
no.
You're not talking. You're a parrot for the Putinist regime.
But
you
then,
have blood on your
you're
hands.
calling him a Putinist, but I think Martin. No, 1 minute. I think we have a moment here. Why am I laboring on this point? Because I thought that was a significant part of the interview, and because I know Martin, I know that it's not easy. I thought he would say no, not after Putin, because he had said earlier, Martin. He had said, if you see an interview he did 4 or 5 days back, I don't know if it was CBS, where he said, the desire to talk has come down, something to that effect. But despite that, to make this outreach, I think we have a moment here. Can the world grab it and create a situation where Putin and Zelensky are literally forced to sit in a room and talk? If they don't sit and talk, this will not end, Martin. This will not end. So China has a responsibility, the US has a responsibility, all of us do. Yes, Martin.
Well, Mr. Zelensky wants to talk to Putin for many years. I think now the situation has changed in terms that this is the only possibility where you can find something, on the ground. Of course, the meeting of the 2 presidents will not solve everything. But what is the main reason now to start to talk is to stop the bloodshed on both sides.
Yeah.
So it's. And I must support Bogdan in terms that, Bucha was just, symbol of something which we haven't seen. There are much worse things going around Ukraine made by the Russian troops. And the Czech Republic, where I'm from, is supporting Ukrainians with heavy weapons as the first country in the world, at least publicly. So we see Ukrainians as a fighting for the rest of the Europe. It's not only for the Ukraine itself, but they are fighting for the Europe against somebody who is threatening Europe for a long time.
Ukraine is fighting for American money, nothing more. In fact, we don't have any kind of army or government in Ukraine. We have an actor, Zelenskyy, pretended to be a president.
If you don't have an army or a government, then why did you? No, if you don't have an army or a government, then why were you forced to leave Kiev? If you didn't have an army or a government, why did you retreat?
Arnab, why do you let such primitive propagandists from Putin on your show? Come on, respect yourself a little bit more. Take a decent Russian. Take somebody from the Russian opposition. Take somebody who speaks for Russia, not is paid to say what Russia Today wants him to say. Come on, get real. You're a serious journalist. Let's have a serious discussion, not this similar propagandist here, who is paid to just say the same thing.
I understand that you're a propagandist, but it's not your time now.
So
please,
come on,
take your time.
This is a waste of time. It's
okay, I'd like to go across now. I'd like to go across to I'd like to go across to Malgorzata Bonikowska, please. And my question to Malgorzata is this: that when I asked him, is he going to accept a status quo or a status quo ante? As in, I asked him a couple of times will you accept it if the Russians tell you, let's have the status quo as of now, which includes losses that Ukraine has had of territory in DPR, LPR regions, as also Mariupol. Then President Zelensky said, no, I will only accept a status quo ante. I need to go back to the pre-February 24th position. What does that indicate to you?
Well, look, first of all, it's a very important statement of Zelensky, and I think it just is a proof that he is a very civilized and smart person. But because for him, meeting with Putin is important for two reasons. One is that, of course, Putin decides, so the decisions will be taken by this guy, and Zelensky wants to confront him directly without any cronies around. But second thing, very important symbolic thing, is that Putin denies Ukraine to exist. Putin denies Zelensky to be a president. Putin denied the right of this government to represent Ukraine. This is a very important thing for Zelensky, because now everybody knows him all over the world, and all the leaders listen to him. So that's the high time for Putin to listen to him directly as well, because Ukraine is an independent state, and in Ukraine, it's not only Zelensky who is fighting, the whole nation is fighting. People are fighting. People don't want to be in the Ruski Mir. That has to be considered by not only the president in Russia, but also by Russians who, majority, a big number, don't agree with this fact. They just don't agree to let Ukraine go. And what can the world do if the nation speaks up so clearly? So that's one thing. And coming back to your question, Arnab, I think Ukrainians, of course, would not agree to lose territories after over a month of a fight. They proved that they are able to fight Russia. No one believed in that. No one gave any chance to Ukraine as a state and Ukrainian army as an army to be able to survive. Everybody was expecting, okay, even the Europeans. I speak from Warsaw. I can just prove that Europeans were also, unfortunately, thinking that Ukraine cannot really fight such a powerful neighbor, but it can. So yes. Putin can be, there is a way to handle such a regime like Russia. There is a way. This way means you fight, you be courageous, you just put the end to such radical claims like, neglecting that there is a neighbor country which doesn't have a right to exist. You just fight. And that's what exactly Zelensky is doing. He wants to have a decent peace, meaning to finish off with the war, of course. Everybody wants it, but not on the Russian conditions. On the conditions which take into consideration that Ukraine is able to fight Russia, is able to stop Russia to take Kiev. It was not possible for Russian army to do that. And in the same way, Ukraine is able to keep integrity of its territory, which is, by the way, the major rule in international law. So if this is accepted, that this is a starting point for these talks, then the talks could be successful. But if Russia just pushes for surrender, that is no go, and Ukrainians will not surrender, you like it or not. Okay. Russia is not able to control Ukraine.
Okay. So the proposition that you're putting there, and I'd like Dr. Marcus to respond to that from London. The proposition you're putting there is that Putin is making the offer of talks with the upper hand. Zelensky is making the offer of talks to Putin, knowing he has an upper hand. Zelensky feels that he can fight his way back if he gets the Western weapons. He wants to take back control of Kharkiv. He will not give up Mariupol. He will not give up Odessa. So while he's offering the talks, he feels he has an upper hand. He feels he can hit the Russians back if he gets the heavy artillery that he probably will get in the next couple of weeks. What do you think, Dr. Marcus? Does he have the upper hand?
I would greatly welcome a direct meeting between Zelensky and Putin. However, is the Ukrainian leader sincere in wanting a meeting with his Russian counterparts? I am of the opinion that he is not.
He's not.
Firstly, Zelensky is acutely aware that the Ukrainian armed forces and the Ukrainian paramilitaries are in a precarious state. After all, the Russian army controls an area in Ukraine which is larger than England and Wales combined. Secondly, Zelensky wants to be seen by the rest of the world as a peacemaker. Furthermore, upon becoming president of Ukraine in 2019, if Zelensky truly wanted to reach out to the Kremlin and to the Russian people, he should have dissolved the neo-Nazi Azov battalion. He should have adhered to the Minsk Accords by not deploying troops and armor, including heavy artillery, into the Donbass. He should have rescinded the laws which prohibit the use of the Russian language, the display of Soviet symbols, and the persecution of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate, laws which affect millions of Ukrainians. Finally, Zelensky should have ordered an investigation into the slaughter of nearly 50 anti-regime protesters in Odessa in May of 2014. If Zelensky was genuine, he would have implemented what I have just said. However, Zelensky is not genuine, and at the same time, he is not an independent player. He is a puppet of the West. After all, every single president of Ukraine, ever since the American-engineered coup in Kiev in February of 2014, has merely been a puppet of America's. That is the brutal reality about Zelensky. And let me reiterate a point again. Millions of people in Ukraine identify with the Russian world. Much of the Ukrainian population are members of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate.
Bodan, please don't.
Rubbish. Let me say two words.
Let me say two words.
Let me say two words.
Refer to other
Let me say two words. I don't know who this guy is and what he knows about Ukraine. Shut up, you Putinist.
Show respect, diversity.
Anyway,
show tolerance to other people's opinions.
He doesn't know anything about Ukraine.
If you are a Democrat, you will respect other people's opinions and you will show tolerance to diverse opinions.
Putin is propagandist. You have blood on your hands as an accessory to killers. You have blood on your hands, mate. You're an accessory. Listen, why are Russians in Ukraine? Why are millions of Russians not welcoming Putin's forces? Why are they fighting against the Russian invaders? Answer me this. Answer me this. Why are Russians fighting? Shut up. You had your choice. You had your thing. We've heard your old record. Listen. Arnab, can you put this Putinist propagandist to sleep,
Everybody
please?
who disagrees with you is not a propagandist. No, but everybody who disagrees with you cannot be called a propagandist, Bodan.
Why?
If you are a Democrat, you will respect other people's opinions. Stop denigrating my opinion. Stop denigrating other people's opinions. This is about having an intelligent, a mature, and an open-minded discussion.
I think the point being tonight that I think we must admit. 1 minute. Dr. Zachary has not spoken. Just 1 minute, Bodan. Bodan, if I may, one of my panelists has not spoken. I don't want to be uncharitable to panelists who waited 35 minutes. I request your attention. I want to go to Zachary and then I'll come back to all of you. See, the only person who doesn't get to speak on the show is me. But that's all right. That's all right. But my question to Zachary is this. See, I think this has confused people. And I think people across are asking, why would Zelensky be so generous about an offer? I personally, I think, Zachary, that he thinks he's playing from a position of strength. He feels he can. You see, Odessa has not fallen. Odessa has not fallen. There is still fighting going on in and around Mariupol. The Russians have moved out of Kiev. So maybe his military and geostrategic assessment is that he can claw his way back and not give up the southern corridor, which is what Putin wants to do.
I think that the fighting is likely to continue for some time still, so it might be a little bit too early to make such pronouncements. I mean, we've seen talks, between the Ukrainian and the Russian sides proceed, throughout this entire military conflict so far. I don't particularly see, anything of note as you just described. As many panelists have said already, it's pretty clear that there's only one way to end this conflict, and that's through some sort of negotiated settlement. Afterwards, we can have a discussion about, whether or not to talk to Vladimir Putin's Russia and whether or not to include it in some fashion, in the European security architecture, or if you can even call it an architecture, over the years ahead. But in the meantime, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, there's going to have to be some sort of discussion. And I think that Zelensky has made that very clear from the beginning. Even when it was not clear in the early days of the war that he had the upper hand, he certainly did not appear to have the upper hand at the beginning, as people were worried that he might have been, abducted and killed in the first days of the war. And yet very early on, he said it's important for there to be talks. But in any event, I just think that this has been a very unfortunate discussion that we've had this evening. It's just been so sad to see people shouting over each other. Quite frankly, it's left me unable to, be able to think of what to be able to add of substance to this discussion, seeing as there's just been so many simplistic points made on all sides and just people shouting, I mean, in some cases pure propaganda, but in other cases, just not willing whatsoever to listen to each other. This is just a sad spectacle. I think it makes a mockery of those people who are actually fighting for their lives in Ukraine right now, and a mockery of the international community's need to have peace and security. I think everyone in the world deserves better, and for those of you who consider yourselves to be professionals, I think you should behave as such. This is really, really unfortunate. I'm sorry that I've had to be a part of this evening.
No, that's perfectly all right. Sentiments are high on all sides. The question that I brought specifically was what's going to happen in places like Odessa now. I think what Zelensky wants to do is that he wants to arm Ukraine to the teeth. And Wokim, just going back to you, how do you think his strategy will play out right now? He's likely to get a lot of weapons. We've heard about the consignment of javelins, others, lots of heavy artillery being promised to him, especially after Bucha. In that case, I would agree completely with Dr. Zachary's assessment that this fighting is likely to go on for far longer than it looks, say, a couple of weeks back. What's your assessment, Wokim?
I fear that the war will go on. But even with new arms, you have to train before using them. This will need months before, let's say, the Ukrainian army is at the necessary level. On the other hand, the Russian army is in a worse status. I was just listening to what the German intelligence services have been listening in the Ukraine, including around Bucha. And it's awful. And therefore, I understand totally Zelensky's wish. And it's not from a position of strength to go to negotiations with Putin. And Putin is the only one with whom you have to negotiate in this case. The first thing he should do is, first of all, what he has done in both the non-alignment of Ukraine, and second, the implementation of the Minsk agreement of 2015. When this was one of the keys in the whole story, if you want, on the Russian side. And therefore, he should give the signal and then ask for immediate negotiations, perhaps sponsored by, let's say, Turkey and India, as an example. But ask for this to do it immediately in order to stop this war, which will have, as a matter of fact, if you like it or not, awful consequences, not only for the Europeans, we are in front of a totally new situation, but in front of, let's say, the treatment of war as such, because we are
I think
observing altogether a public war.
Yeah, I think
where nothing will be able to be hidden somewhere.
Yeah.
And the consequences for any war will be terrible in my view.
Yes.
And therefore, please, this should be the appeal from India and Turkey. Stop it.
Why India and Turkey particularly, Joachim? Why would you say India and Turkey? I find that interesting.
Turkey has taken up these negotiations, and Turkey is accepted by the Russians as by the Ukrainians. And Turkey is not, the beloved partner of the US.
But
Turkey is not the beloved partner of the Chinese or the Russians, no.
Right.
But the Russians and the Ukrainians both accept Turkey as a mediator. And the other one should be India.
Okay, I just asked you that question because it was not the first time, Alfred, that I heard references to Turkey and India, and as possible mediators in this. But India stayed a little away so far because we have strategic interests on both sides, Alfred. So, but it's not the first time I heard about external mediation. Are we coming to a point, therefore, where we are assuming there will have to be 2 or 3 serious external mediators who will almost host, sponsor, or take responsibility for a negotiated outcome, Alfred?
Well, I believe that not only India and Turkey, but as I said, Hungary and Italy, and even Switzerland can play an important mediating role in this situation. I think the more involvement on the part of neutral or halfway neutral countries in this mediation is important. And as I said, I've been, by the way, I'm a good friend of Bohdan's, and Bohdan is a great poet, by the way. Those who do not know Bohdan, I've known Bohdan for 40 years since his work at the UNHCR.
Okay.
As the case may be, I love the Ukrainians. I've been in Ukraine. I love Ukraine. I love the Russians. I've been in Russia all over, and I must say, stop this bloodshed, stop this killing. Let's sit down and talk and reach a compromise. I mean, a quid pro quo, so that no more death and no more suffering and no more tragedy. Thank you.
Bohdan wants to say something to you. Yeah, Bohdan.
Yes, telegraphically, 3-4 quick points to the Russian propagandists. It's the Russian speakers and their ethnic Russians who are fighting the Russian invaders today in Mariupol, Kharkiv. It's not Western Ukrainians. It is Russian speakers, ethnic Russians who are saying, invaders, get out of here. We don't want to be part of the Russian world. Secondly, to my German colleague, I'm sorry, had you not been such appeasers of Putin under Merkel, we would be in a different situation. Had you given us arms and considered us for NATO, we wouldn't be in this mess, and you wouldn't have to do the about turn in your mentality that you've done in the last month. You know, I'm sorry, Germany, you let us all down. You were supposed to be a leader in Europe, and yet you were appeasers. You had your special relationship, Nord Stream 2, Putin, Verstehen, etc. You didn't want to listen to
Joachim
Poland.
responding. Bohdan, since you said something to Joachim, let him respond. He has a right to respond. From Normandy, Joachim, please.
Well, I regret this development a bit. We had another development, we had another relationship with Moscow. We have been trying to help, to assist, to support Ukraine. Perhaps Bogdan is not aware of this. We had been in a normal situation.
I am aware. I've written many times about how you've been complicit.
Okay, let's. I want to go back once to. I want to go back once more. Just 1 minute, please. 1 minute. I want to go to Peter and Dr. Zachary once more. I think we were on a point. Can we go back on the serious point? The serious point which has emerged in the last 5 minutes of the conversation, Dr. Zachary first and then Peter, is that to end the war, let us have a short-term approach of a ceasefire on the ground, and several countries with some degree of significance or strategic interest, Peter and Dr. Zachary, get involved and almost sponsor a negotiated conversation, which can go on in many phases, but at least bring the situation on the ground to a status quo situation. Is it practical? Dr. Zachary, can that happen?
I mean, in theory, it should be, but I doubt that it'll happen anytime soon, simply because there's too much mutual suspicion on all sides at this point, right? There are many on the Ukrainian side who believe that a ceasefire would basically just provide Putin with a little bit of a lull to be able to rearm, prepare for the next phase of the war, etc. And then, of course, if there actually is progress made in the talks as well, there are some demands that the Ukrainian side is also putting forward that are unlikely to be palatable to the Russian side. For example, the notion that a referendum needs to be conducted on whatever is agreed at the negotiating table. That would basically mean that the Russians would have to, leave the Ukrainian territory before anything has actually been approved and ratified. So there's a number of different factors at the end of the day that are making this a little bit of a difficult prospect to imagine that we're going to see a ceasefire, anytime soon. It appears as if this is likely going to be sustained for quite some time. And that will come with significant risks of escalation, of course, that we all need to be prepared for. There are many on the Western side as well that are not prepared to serve as security guarantors under the current situation. Yes. It appears as if certain Western countries have been blindsided by Zelensky's proposal to have them and others serve as security guarantors, and it's not quite certain how such a mechanism would even work in the first place. Should we be exploring these possibilities? Absolutely. I think it would have been great if we'd explored these possibilities before all this bloodshed, before this war broke out. But now, we're in a very difficult situation where not only do you have to understand how these mechanisms are actually going to end up working, but you have to agree, a process for actually moving them into place, even over the short term, to say nothing of their operation in the long term, right? And that is a question of sequencing. That sequencing is not going to be obvious. Sequencing has been one of the issues that has ensured that the conflict between Ukraine and the pro-Russian separatists in the east continued for the past 8 years. Right? No one could agree on what was supposed to happen first, on whether or not there needed to be a full withdrawal first or not, before the status of these territories could be determined. So it's much easier to start wars, but once wars are started, it's very difficult to end them, and it comes with major risks of escalation and risks to international security.
That's true, but most wars do end in these messy negotiations. Is it time for the messy negotiation to start? Peter, last word to you. Is it time for the messy negotiation to start?
Yes, absolutely. When I hear Stoltenberg and General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, say that this war could last for years, that's a very frightening concept. And they were just saying this yesterday. And so we need to get saner heads together to put as much pressure or encouragement, inducement as possible. And the one country that has not been mentioned is China. China is Ukraine's biggest trading partner now. China recognizes Ukraine's sovereignty. China is obviously Russia's closest friend in the world. I've been calling for Xi Jinping to take some leadership. I'd like to see he and Modi together. I was glad that Lavrov visited Delhi on March 25th, that India and China are talking now. They could be a force for good together. And maybe they could talk some sense into Putin, because what's going on now is very dangerous, and it could only get worse. And there's real possibility that this is not contained within Ukraine. Yeah. We are on the verge of the potential for World War III. I think everybody's got to act on this.
I think India and China have not got directly involved, but yes, I think those calls are being heard everywhere, including in New Delhi, in Beijing, and everywhere else. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm completely out of time, and for all our viewers, the Zelensky interview on Republic is being played right after this in a few minutes. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot of reporters on the ground, and it's a pleasure bringing the news to you. See you tomorrow evening. Good night and goodbye.
QS and THE, the world's foremost university rankings organizations, have ranked Amity amongst the top 3% universities globally, making it among